Yay, we made it live.
Yay, we made it. So, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. You have found yourself at a very cool place that you get to hang out for maybe the next 30 minutes, maybe the next 45 minutes. If Faisal and I get on a roll, maybe the next 3 hours. What do you think?
Sounds good for me. I can go on for.
All right, so this is Faisal Ansan and Dr. Sherry Llewellyn, and we are coming at you today on our very first episode of the Coach's Journey podcast. And we are going to really talk about what a coach's journey is like. And that is the whole point of this podcast as we continue to develop it. So we would love for you to come on this journey with us. Now, Faisal, what kind of coach is this podcast for?
So if you are somebody that works anywhere in the realm of mindset, but whether that be in the area of relationships or even in the fitness, because I know coaches who are in the fitness, but they deal with mindset as well, or transformational coach or high performance coach or any kind of coach that deals with the mindset piece that helps people move forward in their life, and you're in the right place, because we want to talk to all the coaches. We want to bring together coaches and learn from each other and continue to thrive together.
Yes, thrive together. That is so important. So Faisal and I are both coaches. We both happen to be certified high performance coaches, but we also integrate a lot of other things into our coaching. And it's one of the things we wanted to do for you guys today is unpack what our coaching journeys have looked like a little bit, because we have met so many coaches along this journey that we've both been on that have dramatically different experiences. And so it's interesting that we have this history or this other job or this almost, it feels like other life that has given us experiences that led us to this decision. Hey, I want to be a coach. Hey, I want to be a fitness coach. Hey, I want to be a mindset coach or a business coach or whatever kind of coach that is. But in that journey, there's major doubts. Most of us have had moments where we're like, oh my gosh, did I just totally screw up my life? I've thought about that a few times. I actually sold a business before I became a coach, and I kind of freaked out. And then I started to have all these doubts of like, well, what if I can't really help as many people as I thought I could? Or just all of these what ifs. And I know, Faisal, you have had some what ifs too. Can you share some of those with us, with the people?
Yeah, yes, of course. And I'd love to hear more
Oh,
of your story as
perfect.
well. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for some reason, technology, there was about 3 seconds where we couldn't hear you.
Oh, you couldn't hear me? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Good.
Verizon,
All
we
right.
can hear you now.
All right. I want you to share more of that story. But I'm open to sharing a little bit about where my journey started. And for me, I mean, I came from an engineering background, and coming into the coaching world, it wasn't even that I had been in that field for long. It was just a few years. I hadn't built a lot of connections. So I was like, I just had gone through this whole journey of learning everything and that I could, and then jumping into the field and realizing this is not for me. I don't care how much I'm gonna make, I'm gonna be just as miserable. And then realizing that, okay, I need a different path. And what I kept realizing over and over, that I want to work with people. And I had been on my own journey of growth, of personal development, of dealing with so much trauma and all sorts of stuff. And as I went towards the coaching world, just like you, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I got certified as a high performance coach. I'm all excited and everything. And I go to these events and meet so many coaches. They're all on a very similar path, very excited. And I come home and I'm sitting in front of my computer. I need to launch my page. I need to tell people what the hell I do. And I'm sitting there. Oh my God. this is much more complicated than I thought, but maybe not. But at least I was making it more complicated than it was at the time. But the thing was that I'm sitting here, I had just left a potentially very, very, very successful and lucrative career for something that I have no idea what I'm doing in. And yeah, I was connected to one or two coaches, but I felt alone most of the time. And every time I talked to other coaches, they felt the same way. And the only time we felt like we were kind of growing was when we would come together in these big events. We're like, yeah, hey, let's do it. And then we'll go back again. And 2 weeks later, it's the same story again. And like, okay, what happens in this process? Why am I not moving forward? It's not like I wasn't doing stuff, but one was the loneliness part, but the other side of it was that I never knew what worked. I didn't have enough experience. I didn't know if I tried this thing, if I was on Facebook for 30 days and I did a 30-day challenge, I remember initially in my first year of coaching. So it wasn't like I was holding back, but I was like, I don't know if it's working or not. I would do that and I would move on to the next thing. And then I would move on to the next thing and I would move on to the next thing. And I had no frame of reference as to what worked, from ads to, I don't know, going through programs and marketing, creating funnels, to reaching out to people one-on-one or being part of groups. Tried it all. But I wouldn't stick long enough to know what would, and I didn't know what long enough was. In the meantime, I had to feed a family. I had to build a business. I was the sole provider. And I know many coaches are on that path, and it was painful. But what made the biggest shift for me, and this was really cool, as I started getting around other coaches, not just in those big events, but just a few coaches. And one of the things that I think we should have mentioned in the beginning was that this podcast or this video is sponsored by Coaching Mastery Community. But for me, my journey really began with that. It was just a few coaches getting together every week and just sharing their journey and their insights and giving each other feedback on the business end and on skill development. And just within that community, I started growing. I started developing confidence. I started realizing, hey, this might work if I just stick to this. And I did. I stuck to a few things. And before I knew it, my business started picking up and I started getting more clients. I started getting better collaborations. And I was like, holy shoot, this could serve a lot of coaches. And that was actually the beginning of Coaching Mastery Community. And we want these conversations to help coaches know that they're not alone. There's so many other coaches on this path, and we can learn from each other and grow together, not just one specific modality, but all sorts of coaches. And essentially what we're doing is we're helping people move forward in different parts of their life. And I feel passionate about that, and I feel even more passionate about working with amazing coaches and creating a bigger impact. And I know coaches care about that, at least the kind of coaches I want to be around.
Yes. You know, one of the things that just amazes me the most about your journey, Faisal, is that, as you said, you were the provider of your family, and here you leave corporate. Probably a really high salary or potential for a high salary. And when you come home one day and say, hey, wife, I want to be unemployed for a while with no income and really have to work hard with no assurance of success. What do you think? How did that conversation go? What was that like? Because I know that you're not alone in that kind of struggle, that transition, that decision to go from safety and security to like complete unknown.
Yeah. So it went a little bit different than that. And I was fortunate to have that support from my wife. In fact, both my wife and I, we had gone to Experts Academy, created by Brendon Burchard. And at the time, I know my ego was pretty high. It's lowered a little bit, but So when I went through that, I was like, we can do this. We can create a business. I didn't know anything about coaching at the time. This was like 2015. And she and Brennan Burchard offers the certified high performance coaching program. And I got excited about it too, but I'm like, you know what? I don't know if we can afford this at this time. And I remember going back to after the event at night, we were talking about it. She's like, we need this. I'm like, no, we can do this on our own. I'm like, no, we need this. And she had the wisdom to know that we didn't know squat about building an online business. I'm like, no, I can figure this out. So anyway, I'm like, okay, if you want to get that, go ahead, we'll figure out the way to move forward. I remember borrowing some funds from my mom because we had spent everything into that, like Experts Academy, done so many other things, literally leaving a whole life behind because we were both miserable in it. And she got it. And then when we came back to Toronto a week later, she's like, you do this. And she told me later on that I always knew that I was getting this for you. I didn't want to start. And she actually, that was the time.
Sneaky.
She was very sneaky about that. So, but let me make it a little bit more challenging here. That was around the time, within the next few months, we had our first daughter.
Oh, wow.
And so I have a family, and we both decided that she'd stay at home with her. She wanted to be on the coaching journey too, but that's something she wanted to do. She wanted to be like fully dedicated to that, at least the first few years. And I was just like, okay, what do I do? And I kept getting these emails of, hey, job opportunities here, job opportunities there. And it was the easiest thing to like, yeah, I need that job. But I had to resist that. And it was painful. It was hard that first year. And I remember, the only thing I could do to sustain myself was I started driving Uber. I remember that. And every morning it was like, when is this business going to pick up? And for the first 2 years, I was that covert coach. I was coaching a lot of people. A lot of them were like customers. They didn't know they were being coached.
Or they were in your back seat as you were driving around.
Literally.
I hope you got some good tips out of that.
I did. A lot of, and that's actually a part I would get a lot of feedback. I've never had this kind of conversation before. And I wouldn't even say it because I didn't even have the confidence to say, oh, I'm a coach. I started slowly building that up. But that was a painful process. And what made it even more painful is because I didn't know that there were so many other coaches on the same goddamn boat. I thought I was the only one dealing with
right?
that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I'm imagining that Uber ride could have been a TV show, kind of one of those like hidden cameras, you know?
I know. Yeah. I wish I had done that.
So thinking about the struggle that you had as a covert coach Uber driver, what do you suppose was the most important factor as you pivoted from being kind of in that role and having that question of, oh my gosh, when is this ever going to land? When is this ever going to pick up? To actually seeing some momentum and some progress.
Yeah. And really the momentum came and I truly, wholly believe that, is when I actually got within groups, within conversations with other coaches. And I was taught that by influencers such as Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, and these guys that, hey, get around other people who are doing the same things as you. Like, it was a great concept, but I had forgotten about that. But it wasn't until with Synchronicities, Jeff Cockrell, he started this group, just like, hey, do you guys want to get together and talk about these sessions within certified high performance coaching community? So like, yeah, it couldn't hurt because I wasn't doing very well. and I had a couple of clients here and there by then, and I had done a little bit of work. I tried quite a few things, but it wasn't really like a full sustainable business model that I had. And I didn't know what wasn't working, what was working. And it was just, but aside from the business piece, like just getting in these conversations and just talking about what is working within, because initially nobody was talking about the business because everybody felt vulnerable there. But it was, the conversations were more along the lines of, hey, what's working within these sessions? How are you challenging your clients? How are you going deeper? How are you dealing with excuses and all sorts of things that we were talking about? How you develop more clarity. And then within those, I realized, holy shoot, I know some things. I've learned a few things I didn't know that I knew. I was constantly doubting myself. And that was hurting my practice. Even with the people that I was working with, I didn't know why they weren't signing up again for the next round of coaching. I didn't know why I wasn't getting the referrals. I didn't know, didn't have the confidence to reach out to more people. Hey, I can help you. But just within those simple conversations, I realized, as I would share some things that I did, like, oh, that's really interesting. I was like, wow, I was in my head this whole time. And then as conversations started going towards the business side of things, it's okay, what are you trying to get clients? Then that motivated me to look into it more. Hey, I tried this, I tried that, but that didn't work. Well, did you try it with this? Did you try it? How long did you try it for? And I realized I only tried it a couple of times, and then I gave up on a couple of things. So within those conversations is where my confidence developed, where I was, and the strategies were pretty simple initially, just reach out to people, but I didn't have the confidence to do that before that. I didn't have that belief in myself that I could take somebody from point A to point B. And I started learning more and more about what people did for sales, for how did they keep moving these clients forward, how did they keep them motivated to stay in the program, how do they keep challenging them, like all these little things that we don't think much of, because we say, oh, we know this as a coach, but that's not true. And if you actually talk to coaches who are getting better and better, they are actually getting better at challenging their clients, getting better at taking their clients deeper, getting better at helping these clients create a better vision for their future, helping them deal with the things that are holding them back. But a lot of coaches, I don't know if they talk about it outside of their training that they get, or if they get training for that matter. So yeah, I mean, for me, that's what really helped skyrocket my business, because then I became more confident to reach out to individuals. I started talking to people who had organizations. I started collaborating with other coaches. Hey, I know some things. I didn't know I knew that before, but now I do. And it sounds so simple and cliche, go talk to other coaches, but that was it for me. And on top of that, add to that, for the 2 years before that, I'd been dealing with like most people in my environment didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't even understand what I was doing, let alone explaining it to them. And they're like, what the hell are you doing, leaving an engineering career? And I literally heard these words, becoming an Uber driver, and you don't know what you're doing, you haven't made a cent. I heard those kind of comments, and I constantly doubted myself. Maybe this is not the right path. Maybe I shouldn't be here. But when I started being around these other coaches, I realized, holy shoot, I'm not alone. And I know you connect with that.
Yeah, well, and I was going to ask is, in those moments of the most doubt, when the people around you that love you, that your family, your parents, your siblings, your friends, and they're like, what are you doing? And they're saying that out of love because they want the best for you, but they completely don't understand what's going on the inside. In those moments, because I know our listeners and so many of the other coaches that we've talked with have had those moments, and maybe are having those moments even today. What do you say to them, or what are those questions that would be so valuable for them to ask themselves?
Well, for one thing, I just want to point out, as coaches, we help people with this stuff. And unless we're modeling this in our own life, I love this quote from Rich Litvin. I think it's from the Prosperous Coach, is that you're only going to take people as deep as you've gone yourself. And this applies to this context, is that, okay, how are we going to challenge people to have those difficult conversations, to be resilient in the face of all this resistance, to continue to move forward despite the fact that nobody believes in them, if we haven't done it ourselves, if we haven't modeled the way? So it starts with, are you living the message?
Yeah.
If that's not there, I don't care how great the question is you're asking yourself, then it's not going anywhere. But just if that's in place, then why are you doing this? What is the vision here? Why is this so important for you to be in this field? And one of the things, like I used to think about this, and like I would think, like, what are the fields where people shouldn't be there for money? And one of those fields is being a doctor. You should not be there for money. But unfortunately, a lot of doctors do go there for money, and the outcome of that is that profit comes before helping people. This is one of those fields. If this is just to create a lifestyle and it's not a passion, I don't know how, because the path is challenging to begin with. And I will share a quick story around that. I used to do these 12-hour shifts with Uber, and I would come home and I would have a session booked, and I would come in and I'd be like, my wife is looking like, are you crazy? But I'm like, no, I'm so excited to go in there. Like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm creating. And fortunately,
Yeah.
I'm no, not fortunately, but through all this work, I do this constantly. All I do is these kind of conversations, as you know. This is my life. But I was so passionate and excited, and I wanted to grow myself, and I wanted to help people on this path. I was so curious that it didn't matter if I got paid or not. Yeah, I was responsible enough to go be an Uber driver to provide for my family, but I'm not letting go of that passion. I don't care how hard it is. Yeah, I want to actually hear your story around. I know you've shared this, being in a small town, and this, like, your journey as a coach, as an influencer. Like how like I think that's really valuable for coaches to hear.
Yeah. So, so my background quickly, I'm a psychologist, a licensed psychologist, for about a decade. Uh, right after I separated from the military, I used my psychological skills as an Air Force psychologist. I separated from the military, started a practice, and grew that for about a decade, about 10 years. It was maybe just a little shy of 10 years. But I would say probably about 3 to 4 years into owning a business and hiring and being a leader and all that stuff, I realized very quickly, I'm like, this isn't one of those cases of a natural born leader. Your natural abilities will only take you so far. So I just dove into self-development around leadership. And I did that for about a year or two, and then started to recognize all of these deficits around me as well. I recognize them in myself. I recognize them in a lot of the business leaders in my community. And so then I kind of had this passion, like, oh, maybe I should, I could coach them. I could help them. And so I did some work in leadership and entrepreneurship in general, and I loved it. And so I just slowly kind of shifted out of traditional mental health. And while I still owned the business, still ran the business, had therapists work for me and all of that stuff, but I kept on getting pulled back out of coaching and working with entrepreneurs and business owners into mental health, which is such a critically important field. But it wasn't where I was actually finding my energy or passion, which I think is a really important thing to recognize. I was having a conversation with another therapist just over this past weekend. And she was grilling me about coaching, about like, what's the difference, and what's it like to switch, and how, what should I know, or what kind of training should I get. But I, when I was kind of sharing my story with her, I talked about how I recognized when I was doing the coaching and working with business leaders and business owners, I was energized afterwards, kind of like what you were saying, Faisal. You were so excited. And so I would come away from these meetings, these coaching appointments, like full of ideas and brainstorming. But then at the end of my mental health sessions, I just felt tired and lethargic, and just, I don't know, I was starting to feel a little bit hopeless, just like some of the clients, which, if your therapist is hopeless, like that is a bad place to be. So I recognized I needed to make a change. Now I was fortunate enough to have been able to build a 7-figure mental health practice, and so figuring out what to do with that and then transition out of that was crazy hard and crazy emotional. Huge amount of personal development happened, not by choice, out of that whole transition. But it's been such a blessing to have shifted into an area that I have a lot more freedom to pursue in a way that I feel like I'm able to use my gifts and skills and abilities more intentionally and more like, niche and specifically. The challenge I had through that whole time is that I live in a pretty small town. There's only about 60,000 people in my town, and even the business owners that I had talked about with coaching, very few of them, I can count them on, well, like 2 fingers, saw the value of coaching for an entrepreneur, of coaching for a business owner, for a leader. I didn't know what to do with that. So, people were looking at me like, yeah, what you're providing, what you're proposing is completely unnecessary. So it was really frustrating, and I didn't have anybody locally that I could, consult with, who could be actually my mentor. I didn't have anybody locally that I could, even as a practice owner, when I was, I had to go find groups of practice owners, mental health practice owners, like that were scattered all around the country, because there just weren't any local that had the same mindset as me and were open to actually having these discussions. And so one of the most important things that I kind of have latched onto as I was growing my practice, and then as I transitioned into my coaching practice, is I've got to find people who think like me, and especially who are even a few steps ahead of me. Because there's only, it's Faisal, as you said, I love the quote. I think it was Jim Rohn. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most, paraphrasing. And I just, you can't help but be influenced by the mindset and the vision, or the lack of vision, of the people that you're around. And so being able to talk with people like Faisal, and all of the other coaches that I've come to know and love, both through my certification as well as this community and some other interactions I've had, has been priceless, absolutely priceless.
Yeah, I love that. I really do that. And one of the things when it comes to coaches and influencers in general is that very few people understand this path anyway. It's like, I think it was somebody, it was one of my coaching friends or influencer friends who was given this feedback by one of his relatives, and they had a lot of wisdom. It's like, your world is really small. As much as we think there are not a lot of coaches in the world, there are not a lot of influencers in the world. And when we think of like big names like Tony Robbins, these guys, but then there are other ones, like you see them popping everywhere, but there's still not a lot. Nobody really understands what coaching is. And most people, I mean, I'll just, as a reference, most people in my family, after 6 years of doing this, they think I just get on a call and give people advice. They literally think that. And I just, at some point, I was like, I just smile now. I don't even say anything. I'm like, unless you get on a call with me, that's not what I do. And that's their idea of coach. And so it's a field where we need to grow together and not only make it more mainstream so people understand it more, it's becoming more and more visible, but also kind of stick together on this path. Because if there aren't enough coaches and people don't really recognize this field as a tangible field, as an actual field, then where are you getting your support from?
Right. You know what's funny? As a psychologist, and even as I was starting to do my leadership coaching or executive coaching, I didn't even know what coaching was either.
Yeah.
People would ask me all the time, well, like, okay, well, what's the difference between coaching and mental health, therapy or being a psychologist? And I'm like, like I didn't even have a good answer. And I've had to kind of come to terms and figure that out on my own through just practice and learning and understanding, especially with high performance coaching. Like that was the framework. Like if I had not gotten that certification, and maybe another certification could have done the same thing for me, but my mind has been indoctrinated by psychology and the field of psychology. And short of positive psychology, a lot of psychology does not look at people and move them into a place of being amazing or of living an amazing life. It's taken people that are, for lack of a better term, depressed and trying to make them average or normal or mediocre. And that was not consistent with what I wanted or who I was or my own goals and dreams. And but I realized as a psychologist, like I hit a wall. I did the best I could with, there's one business owner in particular that I still am coaching with him and his whole team today. But I was working with him individually, and I kept on hitting a wall with my skill set. Like, I don't know how to take him further. Like he doesn't have a diagnosable issue. And so I just was really struggling with how to actually help him in the realm of amazingness is kind of what I call it. But once I kind of dug into what is coaching, what is a framework, and then as I've been having all these conversations with other coaches such as Faisal and hearing his frame of reference and some of the other frames of reference and how do they think about things and what, how do they move their clients, into change and all of these things. These are things that in some respects, I was familiar with and did as a psychologist. It's just a very different world and applied in a different way to a different kind of person often. It just blew my mind. So this whole idea of like, well, what is coaching? I still feel like I'm kind of figuring that out.
Yeah, I love that you share, and I love these conversations because as I'm listening to this, it's becoming clear why I do what I do the way I do. And I think a lot of, as we're talking about the coach's journey, a lot of your practice as a coach will be connected to your own journey, how you're going through it. So for me specifically, the two things that I do is I work with clients on a one-on-one basis, and I've created a community, which I finally came up with a name. I haven't even announced it. Should I say it? I didn't come up with the name. My wife's gonna kill me if I say that I did. She did, and I ran it through somebody who's doing my copyright. Monica, if you're listening to this, she knows about it already. So we came up with the name, the Space Creators Community. So the tagline will say, "Your potential lies in the space that you create."
Oh, I love it.
And that's, so for me, that goes back to my journey, is like, how was I able to do this from a place where I didn't know what to do? And much of that went back to my own growth as a human being. And it was around self-awareness, is like, and you asked the question before, well, how did I move forward regardless of what other people said? And for me, it was first of all, it was creating a bigger vision. I knew that there was more to life than what I was being sold. But the other side was, what do I need to connect with to kind of lower that noise in my head and what I hear from outside? And that was my potential. And that was the space that I kept creating for myself, is that every time I had those moments of not thoughts running through my head, and I had those moments of when I was picturing a better, this future, literally, literally this future, it kept me going. And as I think about the community that I've created, the people who come there, they essentially, that's their struggle. They don't know how to deal with those noises. And the more we've gone deeper into, well, how can they connect with their potential? How can they connect with a bigger vision for themselves, for their family, for their community? How can they be those better leaders? And as they are surrounded with other people within that community, and one of the most common things that I hear, oh, I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one who thought that. Holy shoot, there are other amazing human beings who think like you, and you need to be around them. They are essentially your family. They're your soulmate. They're your kin that you need to be around to move forward.
Yeah.
And there's something I learned from Lisa Nicole's speaker. She was on an interview, and she got really emotional about this, and she talked about it. It's like, when people go on this different journey to create a different vision, a different life, to go towards their potential, they think that they can grab onto all these people and go forward as a leader. But the reality is that there's a single door that you can walk through, that door of potential. When you walk through that, you can't carry all these people with you. But then she said this, like, I had to walk through that. And it was scary, it was lonely, but on the other side of it, and this is her words as she says this, that I was more valuable to my community. Because when I came back, I was a different human being.
And you connect very deeply with that.
Yeah. And now, like within my community, there are people that are looking up to what I'm doing. They're creating business models based on how I'm approaching. They're creating lifestyles, and they're asking me for perspective on this, that, and the other. And initially, I remember when I was, I'm like, well, I'm gonna show these people. But now when I look, I'm like, you know what? I get it. They're on their path. Whoever feels inspired, great. Whoever doesn't, they don't. But the reason why I went towards that is that there are people as coaches, at least from my perspective, is we're helping them connect with their potential. We're helping them create this bigger vision for their life. Yeah. For one thing, I don't think we can help them do that without us going through this journey and without us challenging ourselves. But on top of that, bringing them together within communities, but also supporting them constantly, that becomes a very big part of at least my life as a coach. But then how am I getting that? Where am I getting that? Because I'm the one who's constantly there for my family, for my clients, for my community. I'm the one who's always the listening ear. Where am I getting that? Part of it is that we need to, as coaches, we need to get a coach, for sure. The other part of it is we need to be around other coaches and influencers who understand this journey, who know the challenges of this path. And a lot of the coaches that I talk to, they understand the impact piece. They understand that they're modeling the way for their community, their family. They get that. And for around more coaches like that, I think we can go much faster and much farther.
100%. Which, I feel like that leads so naturally into the whole point of this podcast and what people can look forward to as they continue to listen to future episodes. There's a couple different ways in which, we intend to serve the coaching community through this podcast. You want to kind of speak to at least one of them?
Yeah. There are two things at least we're thinking about. One is just really inviting coaches who talk about their journey, so we understand that we're not the only one. And I know there will be variations, and different coaches will relate to different, and also getting them to share like what works within your practice. How are you challenging your clients to move forward? What kind of groups and communities are you creating? What is working in your practice? What is not working? What are the challenging areas? And really, because it's going to be live then I love this because you don't know what you're going to expect. I didn't know I was going to cry, right? Well, maybe I did because I do cry but I
This is going to
not.
be live and uncensored, and you get what you get. We're not editing or filtering this, guys. Like, that's not being genuine, and that's not who we are.
Yeah, and then we want to bring that authenticity, whatever your journey is, share that. And the other side of it is the business piece of coaching, which is really important. Part of it will be within the conversation, but you can talk about maybe you can share the experts that we want to bring in who are going to help us move forward in our business.
Yeah, so this podcast is sponsored by the Coaching Mastery community, and we are in the process of developing a coaching roadmap, which we are so excited about. Because, as Faisal talked about, like when he was starting to coach and trying to figure out how to get things started, like he's like, well, I tried this thing and I tried this thing and I did this and that. And I just, there's that sense of being overwhelmed and not really being sure where to spend your time and attention and your energy. And so the coaching roadmap is intended to give some clarity on what do you need to start first? And then what do you shift into? And maybe you've already done those things and you've been doing coaching and you've been building your business for a few years, but then what's next? Like, how do you scale that? How do you grow that? How do you really truly get your business to have the impact that you're wanting, whatever that looks like for you? And so we've got a lot of great folks planned that are both inside the community and outside of the coaching community. But even though they're outside, they run businesses and are experts in ways that support the coaching that are what we need. Sometimes I have conversations with people, again, going back to my town, sometimes I have conversations with other business people about marketing and funnels, and they look at me like, I have a funnel in my kitchen. Like, I don't.
Not that kind of funnel.
Funnel, like that's not what I'm talking about. So, but as a coach, you're probably like, oh yeah, of course, a funnel, like, but if you don't know what a funnel is related to marketing, there may be a gap in knowledge there that we can help fill. But we're just constantly gonna be bringing new people, fresh people, but what we're excited about is these are gonna be real world people sharing their real world struggles and successes. And this isn't going to be us coming, either Faisal or myself or our guests. They're not going to be like, hey, I'm an expert in this. I'm a perfect human being. I make $29 billion a year. It's not that. It's not this like grandiose sense of it. We're bringing people to you that can give you something tangible that you can actually use. And maybe they're only a step or two ahead of you. But if you think about some of the people that have the most impact on you in your life, they probably were just a couple steps ahead of you because you could relate to them. You could be like, oh yeah, I'm having that struggle right now. And that's the same struggle they had like 2-3 months ago. I think that's one of the things that Faisal is so powerful about you, is because you were them a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, or whatever. It's like people are able to look at the journey that you're taking, and it's not a perfect journey. And some of your launches, some of your initial launches weren't as huge as maybe you wanted them to be, but you persevered and you kept on, and you're getting traction, and people can see that action, that imperfect action, but it's working, and so that makes you hugely influential in your own right. So we want to bring more people like that to your guys' eyeballs and ears.
Yeah, thank you. And also within that journey, and it's one of the others. So there are two themes here that we want to talk. Well, overall is the coaching journey, but then within that is like how are we growing as a coach internally ourselves, but also within our skill sets, within how we challenge clients, within how we take clients from point A to point B, and we're going to be talking with coaches from so many different modalities. We're going to get different perspectives on this, not just individuals, but also within groups. How are we facilitating these groups?
Yeah.
But then also the other side of it is, as Sherry pointed out, is the business side. So we might even bring not just coaches, but also experts within the business field, because what we're talking essentially about is the entrepreneur journey. Hey, how are you handling the sales piece here? How are you handling the marketing? How are you taking care of those funnels, not the kitchen ones? And the systems that we have, and what's the copy, the messaging that we're creating. And right now I'm working with a designer copywriter who we're going to have on the podcast. She's awesome. And I realized so much within that work with her that, holy shoot, I was not communicating what I wanted to communicate. And she helped me develop that slowly. And now my message is more clear, and I'm becoming more confident to reach out to clients and start to scale my business more. So just bringing all these coaches / experts together here and creating a community where we're sharing knowledge, sharing perspective, seeing each other's journey. I think it's incredibly valuable. I wish I had a podcast like that to listen to. Maybe there was, and I never looked at it, but this is our journey. We want to share this with you.
Yeah. And so the Coach's Journey podcast, our intention, this is going to be a weekly podcast. We are going to typically run it live on the YouTube. We had technical difficulties. It may have been that YouTube is saying that they weren't ready for us technically to be able to stream live to there yet. Hopefully it will all be resolved by next week. So today we chose to stream this live to our public Facebook group for the Coaching Mastery community. We're also going to rip the audio and get that uploaded as a podcast, so you can listen to it on your favorite podcast app. And so that way, if you're driving or you're at the gym, like what I tend to do, you can listen to it. Or if you're on the Stairmaster and you need something visual to focus on to kind of forget what you're doing, you can watch it on YouTube, whatever is your pleasure. But we just ask that you like this, subscribe to it, and share it with all your coaching friends, because we would, we just want this to be an opportunity to provide support, encouragement, knowledge, even accountability to our journey as a coach, because we need each other, as Faisal said, to go further and faster.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm excited to have these live uncensored conversations. I'm excited to break down a few times. You're gonna be seeing me crying a lot, and hopefully Sherry will cry a few times too.
Oh yeah, I got them. My tears come, absolutely.
So lots of emotions. I know that's important for coaches. Lots of joy that we're going to bring, lots of authenticity, lots of knowledge, perspective. I'm really excited to move forward, and we'll see you next week with a new guest.
See you next week, guys.
Bye.